Guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. I'm going to be talking about the new moon we've got coming up here on Saturday, June 17th, that peaks at 9:37 p.m. Pacific time. So with that said, for many of you in other parts of the world, this will actually be taking place on Sunday, June 18th. But really what this is a time to manifest growth that we want to experience that's related to the sign of Gemini. Okay, this new moon takes place at 26 degrees Gemini. And in 6 months from now, we'll have a full moon in the sign of Gemini. So this is our opportunity over these next 6 months to really bring growth that, again, is related to the sign of Gemini into our life. Now, of course, we all experience this as a collective. Okay, everybody gets to experience the new moon at 26 degrees Gemini. However, it's also incredibly unique to each and every one of us. And so much of this depends on your own natal chart. Do you have anything in your natal chart near 26 degrees Gemini? Or maybe opposing that at 26 degrees Sagittarius, or maybe trining that at 26 degrees Aquarius or Libra? There's so much that can be said when we apply this stuff to your own natal chart. But as some of you might be getting a little more familiar with at this point, you can also just look to see which house, aka which area of your life this new moon takes place for you in your own natal chart. If you're using a whole sign house system, all you got to do is look to see which little slice of pie in your natal chart is ruled by the sign of Gemini. Maybe it's the 6th house. So this is about physical health and being of service. Maybe this is in your 10th house. So it's about career. Maybe it's in your 7th house. So it's about relationships. Maybe it's in your 3rd house. So it's about communication or siblings. Maybe you're Gemini rising, and this is all about the energy that you are manifesting within yourself, your house of self. Now, when you get a reading with me, I offer you a free video recording. So you can always go back to that recording. We go through everything. We go through every single house in the natal chart. So you can always go back to that recording and see which area of your life is being impacted by anything astrological. Okay, so that's something to just take into consideration here. If that's too much for you, that's perfectly okay. Just take a step back and focus on the new beginnings or opportunity for growth related to this wonderful sign of Gemini. So in this recording, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the sign of Gemini for you, so you know what you're working with here. I'm also going to be pulling up the chart and show you some other prominent astrological forces that we will be receiving in the days surrounding this new moon. I'm also going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Gemini, because these parts of our body become more sensitive when the moon transits through the sign of Gemini, but especially when it's a transit like this, because we'll have Sun, Moon, and Mercury, which is Gemini's ruler, all in the sign of Gemini. So of course, I will also be talking about certain herbal remedies to help support these parts of our body in days surrounding this transit. And I will also be talking about gemstones that really resonate well with the sign of Gemini and just the overall astrological forces we'll be receiving for this transit. Okay, so for starters, this, like I said, it takes place in the sign of Gemini, 26 degrees Gemini. So Gemini is what we call the mutable air sign. Now, when I say mutable, what I'm talking about is adaptability. The sign of Gemini is very adaptable. This is a sign that has so much to do with popularity and being sociable, okay? It can adapt into all kinds of new situations. And not only that, but it can also have friends of all different types of people who are their friends, all different types of groups of people a Gemini can get along with and be socializing with, especially because it's not just mutable, but in the element of air. Okay, now air signs are definitely associated with intellect. This is a highly intellectual energy. A lot of times when people have a heavy amount of Gemini energy in their natal chart, they tend to have these busy minds that are everything's moving quickly, that sort of thing. So it's very, very intellectual, but the mutable air, the adaptable air, that plays a huge role in why this sign can be so sociable. Furthermore, it's ruled by Mercury, okay? And we're going to talk about Mercury for a minute here, because I've kind of been obsessed with Mercury lately, just been studying Mercury to the core. Of course, I've been studying Mercury for years, but more in depth lately. And since Mercury is such a key player for this transit, I figured we'd go into a little bit of depth about Mercury. Mercury is Hermes in Greek mythology. Okay, the strong association is with Mercury and Hermes is the messenger of the gods. Okay, Gemini is the sign of communication. It is the messenger of the zodiac. And that is really coming from the mercurial influence, the Mercury influence. Now, when we think about this, Mercury is also in Egyptian mythology is Thoth, okay, who is also a messenger of the gods, communicates with the dead and the living. Okay, now also Odin is Mercury in Norse mythology. And Odin is also one who basically is the communicator from the living to the dead. A lot more to this, but overall, this mercurial energy, this energy of Mercury is all about receiving the messages, but then organizing them in our mind. And so we can put them back out. Let me go. And some of you have already heard me say this before, but it's a really good thing to understand. Mercury also rules Virgo. Okay. So Mercury rules, every single zodiac sign is ruled by either one or two celestial bodies. Okay. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So Gemini is the sign of communication. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. In fact, where I grew up, there was this thing called the Mercury News. It was like a newspaper. It was called the Mercury News because it's the messenger. Okay, so with that said, this Virgoan energy is the sign of like keeping things all organized, always having to keep things organized. In fact, that's why when Mercury goes retrograde, everybody freaks out like, oh my gosh, no, don't have your business meeting while Mercury's in retrograde because communication skills are down and our mental function isn't as optimal as we would like for it to be. Okay, that's Mercury's influence. But going back to this Virgo Gemini connection here, we are constantly receiving information, whether we're reading a book or watching TV. You are receiving information right now as I am communicating to you. We're having a mercurial moment right now. So as you're receiving this information, it's going into your consciousness, and Mercury is the receiver of that information and basically has to keep everything super organized, okay? Has to put basically like a hashtag or a label on the file of information that you are receiving from me right now and put it away. It has to be organized somewhere into your consciousness so that when you're ready to communicate it, when you're ready to put that information back out, Mercury can go in and find his organized little file and pull it back out for you to communicate it. That's the messenger of the gods. So Gemini is the messenger part of Mercury's energy. Virgo is the organized part of Mercury. And in fact, a lot of people who have very debilitated Mercuries in their natal chart can really struggle with communication skills, or even something along those lines of not being able to speak until they're 4 years old, or maybe they weren't able to write as well till they were older, or sometimes they'll just struggle, journaling about something is something that's very difficult for them. That's Mercury's energy. So here's Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, who also, at the time of this new moon, Mercury is going through the sign of Gemini. So we have all this energy to support the communication. Now, something else to mention here, Gemini is the sign of duality. Okay, it's represented by the twins. Like I said, it's like a busy energy, busy mind kind of energy. There's messages going in, there's messages going back out. Okay, now with that said, this sign of Gemini can definitely have a strong duality to it, sometimes feeling two ways about something at the exact same time, or kind of have like shifty ideas on, okay, I want to do this. Oh, no, I want to do it that way. Oh, no, I want to do it this way. That's very adaptable, mutable air, the twins energy, the sign that kind of wants to go two directions at the same time. It is a really good idea because Gemini energy is absolutely wonderful. My Jupiter is in Gemini. I have a strong tendency to have a mutual shared luck with other Geminis. Very interesting. But regardless, this Gemini energy is absolutely, it's like the most fun, excitable, popular, sort of bouncy energy of the zodiac. But with that said, because it is this sign of duality and mutable air, there can be a difficult time to stay on track, okay? We do have Venus and Mars going through Leo, so that can be helpful for staying on track and staying consistent with our goals. But it is a good idea to just try not to get too sidetracked with all this Gemini energy that we're receiving. Okay, so let's see here. Mutable air ruled by Mercury. It is the twins. I think we covered Gemini for the most part. This is how do you want to grow in these ways? Maybe you want better communication skills. And in fact, days basically shortly after this new moon could be a really good time for having a business meeting. Or maybe there's like this, oh, I really need to talk to this person about this really important thing. Days following this new moon might be a really good time for that sort of thing, the important information that you want to share. Or maybe you've been trying to figure out, when you want to start authoring a book, or maybe you want to figure out, maybe you want to actually put your book out there. A lot of this would depend on your own natal chart and really specific things that are going on there. But overall, as a collective, this is a good time for getting the message out there. And also, how do you want, maybe you want to be more popular. Maybe you want to set your intentions for being more popular, or maybe you just want better communication skills. Now's the time to set the intentions for that. Now, again, this could be coming through any area of your natal chart. It could be coming through your house of career. Maybe it's coming through your house of relationships. Maybe it's coming through your house of transformation. And that's why it's so great to get familiar with our natal chart, so you can finely tune exactly what area of your life you are manifesting this growth through. Okay, so I don't know if I mentioned this already. If you want to schedule a reading, just go to aaronwaiteastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. And with that reading, you could honestly, if you just want to get familiar with your natal chart, if you just want to know the houses, so when you see me put these videos out, you can go back and see which area of my life is this coming through. Honestly, we could do that in a 30-minute session if that's specifically all you wanted. So there's that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart so we can talk about some other prominent astrological forces we'll be receiving at the time of this new moon. It is a pretty fun new moon. I'm actually liking the chart here. Okay, so there are some goofy things going on for sure. Pluto just retrograding back into 29 degrees Capricorn. We'll talk about that. But overall, basically, in case you're new to my recordings, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, basically what we're looking at is a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. I put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. These guys right here, these are the celestial bodies. Like here's the sun where my mouse is moving. Here's the moon. Here's Mercury. Here's Uranus. Here's Jupiter. Okay, here's Neptune. Here's Saturn. So hopefully you get the gist there. Those are the celestial bodies, the planets, that sort of thing. In the wheel a little way, these are the zodiac signs that these things are going to be beaming through onto Earth when we take, when we experience this new moon. Now, anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the exact same spot. So here's the sun, here's the moon. They're both at 26 degrees Gemini. See, it's the twins. The glyph for Gemini is the twins, okay? Not only that, there's some really, really interesting stuff if you ever find yourself with a good amount of time on your hands to research the twin towers coming down and see how the sign of Gemini played into that. Very interesting stuff. Okay, these little numbers here, those are the minutes. We don't need to focus on those for this recording, but this new moon takes place at 26 degrees, 43 minutes Gemini. Now, with that said, this is kind of towards the end of Gemini season. It's in the third decan, which actually gives it a little twist of Aquarius energy as well, which can be nice to help stabilize things. But that sign of Aquarius also has a lot to do with information, okay? This is a really kind of sociable new moon, okay? So there's that. Moreover, if you want to be more sociable, this is a time to manifest that. And of course, we have to take into consideration, maybe you got Gemini in your 4th house and you just were not really necessarily meant to. That doesn't mean if you have Gemini in your 4th house that you weren't meant to be a socialite, but it can, but just keep that in mind. But overall, this is as a collective. That's why it's so good to get familiar with our natal chart so you can see what's in your destiny and what might not be in your destiny. But this sign of Gemini overall, this is a really good time. Not only that, but the only things in retrograde for this new moon is Pluto and Saturn. So everything else, well, except for the nodes, but they're almost always in retrograde. Everything else is moving forward. So this could be a very good time, especially like the days after this new moon could be a good time for putting the message out there. All right. And what I like to do, in case if you're brand new to my recordings, every single time we have a new moon, I've been doing this for 7 years now. I would not continue to be doing this because it is a little time consuming. If I didn't see such incredible results from it. Every single time we have a new moon, I pull out my journal, I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to the sign the moon is transiting through, okay? And of course, I know my chart, so I know how to apply it to the house in my natal chart that is coming through. And then I take the gemstones that resonate well with the astrological forces we're receiving, and I put those gemstones on top of my journal and put that journal on top of a windowsill so that when the moon transits over, it's putting the energy out into the universe, like spells that I'm casting. Okay, so there's that. Now, and again, this is the sign of Gemini. This is getting the message out there. We really do have some really good support for this. Okay, so let's see here. The thing I'm going to talk about next is here is Mercury. I like this. I really see Mercury going through Gemini is great for communication skills, especially if he's not in retrograde. But What I also like is that Mercury is at 11 degrees Gemini. The sun and the moon are at 26 degrees Gemini. So they're not like a strong conjunction. So like if Mercury was a little further along at like 24 degrees Gemini, then there might be a little bit too much of a blend going on between sun, moon, and Mercury, but Mercury's a little further back. So he's working independently in his own home, okay, ready to support the communication. Definitely could be activating nervous systems. I'll get to that when we get a little further along in the video. But overall, one of the first things that stands out to me when I pull up this chart is these blue lines that go from here to here. They are called trines, which are approximately 120-degree angle going up here to the south node. Now, if you're really new to my recordings, what we're looking at here is based on my location. Of course, this chart is going to work no matter where you are in the world. Every single person on Earth using Western astrology is having a new moon at 26 degrees Gemini. But for some people, if you're over in New York, they'll actually be down here. The whole zodiac moves. The whole entire sign of Gemini will be down here. It just depends on where you are in the world. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this right here is something called the midheaven. That is based on my location. Unless you live near Santa Cruz, California, then don't pay any attention to this guy. Just focus on this guy, the south node. Okay, so the south node is harmonizing with this new moon. Now, if you've never seen any of my recordings before, I've been talking about this since January of 2022. The south node going through the sign of Scorpio, which is almost done. It's almost done. The south node is going to be done in the sign of Scorpio. I believe it's July 17th, at some point in the middle of July, the south node moves out of Scorpio. So this is the end. The south node won't be back in the sign of Scorpio for 18 years. This is the ultimate time to flush out what is not serving you. What kind of toxicity or just something that's holding you down. It's time to flush it out. And because the sign of Scorpio basically rules all the things that flush it out, it rules the excretory system. The sign of Scorpio is really like the sign of transformation. And that transformation has to do with flushing things out so you can make room for new powerful beginnings. Okay. And the south node, that's the drain point. That's where celestial tides go out anyway. So the sign of Scorpio, excretory system's pulling things out, and the south node is like, wahoo, let's get rid of this stuff. And that's harmonizing with this new moon. And in fact, just, I don't know, about 6 hours after this new moon, a little further than that, maybe 10 hours after this new moon, then the moon is going to make an exact trine with this south node. The moon will already be waxing and getting bigger. Let's flush things out that are not serving you, especially if they have anything to do with if the toxic things that are holding you down have anything to do with holding back your communication skills, because this new moon in Gemini, communication skills, it's harmonizing with flushing out what's not working for you. Okay, so hope that made sense. Now, let's see. Next, I was going to talk about, where should we go next? Let's talk about these guys right here, because I'm excited about this. This right here is Venus, and this right here is Mars, okay? I love Venus and Mars together. I have a lot of clients, like when I pull up their chart and I see this, I have a lot of clients who have this, and it's almost like I automatically know I'm going to like, ooh, this person's neat. And that's not the only, there's tons of things that I really love about people's natal charts, but Venus is the influencer of love, romance, beauty, poetry, all things aesthetically pleasing. She rules what we are attracted to. She is feminine. She's soft. She's soothing. Okay. Now, Mars is masculine. Mars is aggressive and dominant and he rules our physical drive. Basically, and our sex drive, okay? So basically, we got Venus, the feminine, lovely, romantic, next to the masculine, revved up guy, okay? And so I love them together. It's almost like the feminine and the masculine coming together here, and they're in the sign of Leo. Leo, one of my favorite signs of the zodiac, okay? Leo, the fixed fire sign of royalty and leadership and willpower, and it's the sign of like courage. It's the lion, okay? And not only that, but I'll tell you what, first of all, just Mars in Leo in and of itself, everybody I know who has Mars in Leo, like literally gets every single job they ever apply for, because it's Mars, the aggressor, going through the sign of courage. And then almost every single person I know that has Venus in Leo is like beautiful. They're, and not just, this is, I mean, sure, a lot of them are beautiful, just very attractive people. But what really makes them so beautiful is there's Venus, who rules what we are attracted to, going through the sign of courage. These people will just, they see what they like, they go up to you, they put their armor on it, they're like, how you doing? And can be very courageous and overall just beautiful people. So we got Venus and Mars in that sign of courage. It's just such, I love these guys there. And in fact, let's say you're born somewhere between, let's say August 1st and August 12th. You got Venus and Mars sitting right on your sun right now. It's a time for willpower. I mean, of course, there are things that can counteract this. So it doesn't necessarily apply to every single person. But for the most part, if Venus and Mars are shining on your sun and you're already Leo, and you got good things going on, go after it. Whatever it is you want to go after, especially if it involves a little romance. Okay, so there's that. Now, also Venus and Mars, Leo's a fixed sign, which I like, the stability that comes with that. Okay, because here we have all this mutable Gemini energy all over the place. And then we've got that Leo energy to kind of be like, whoa, okay, stay on track. Try not to get too sidetracked with all the fascinating things around you. So that's nice. But another thing we've got going on here is Mercury at 11 degrees Gemini. Here's Venus at 11 degrees Leo. They are basically making a perfect exact sextile, this green line that's go from here to here, 60-degree angle, which creates opportunity. Here we got the mental function and the communication creating opportunity with this courageous Leo energy going on. So that's a nice aspect going on there. Okay, so the next thing I will talk about, let's jump on down here and talk about the North Node in Jupiter. So Jupiter, let's start with the North Node. The North, we already talked about the South Node. So a lot of you guys already know this. South Node's where energy goes out. North Node is where energy comes in. There is so much more depth about these nodes. They're my favorite topic on astrology, but just for time's sake, this is where energy comes in through the North Node. And that's another one. It's going through the sign of Taurus. These nodes are always opposite each other. The North and South Node have to be opposite each other. And since I already said, the South Node's moving out of the sign of Scorpio in the middle of July, the North Node has been going through the sign of Taurus since January of 2022 and will be out of Taurus. They actually go backwards through the zodiac. Sorry if I'm throwing too much information at the people who are new to this, but the nodes are almost always in retrograde. So they go backwards. So this North Node is going to go into Aries. So that's, again, believe it's July 17th, somewhere near there. So we've got the tail end here of this, of these nodes going through these zodiac signs. And it's been powerful. Okay. Really, Taurus is the sign of money. Also the sign of agriculture, rules things like it is the bull. Taurus is the bull. And it actually, like, is said to rule cows and really farm animals in general. So we've had all this North Node. I mean, when we had Uranus conjunct the North Node, just really wild things going on with this sign of Taurus. And right as this transit is coming to a head here with the North Node just about to move out of that sign of Taurus, of course, we have Jupiter. Jupiter is like, hey, let's hang out for a minute to the North Node. So this is already very powerful energy that's been coming in that involves money. And seriously, this is so unique to each and every one of us. Some people, like if you're an Aries rising and you've got Taurus in your second house, this might be a great transit for you. If you're a Libra rising and you got Taurus in your 8th house, then this might not be so financially abundant for you. It just depends. But overall, this sign of Taurus having to do with money, inflation, all these crazy things that are going on with our money and our agricultural systems. But again, that North Node is almost done there. But for right now, it's basically Jupiter, the expander, the one who makes things a bigger deal. He's sitting right on the dragon's head. The North Node is also called the dragon's head, or Rahu. Okay, so making all this stuff a bigger deal with that sign of Taurus. It's almost like that when somebody leaves a room with a lot of aggression, that's kind of the North Node leaving the sign of Taurus. Jupiter's like, wow, let's make this a big deal first. So that's just something. And not only that, but this Jupiter energy, Jupiter rules fat. Okay. The sign of Taurus happens to love to eat. Taurus generally tends to like the sweeter foods. But if you're somebody who's going through, because I actually do have quite a few clients who are really struggling to lose weight, this is kind of a tough transit. Of course, again, everything depends on your own natal chart, but be mindful about your eating habits while this is going on. I'd say really over the next 2 or 3 weeks, just be a little extra mindful about, like the midnight cravings or, stuff that's just not good to put. There's nothing wrong with eating, but there's certain times of the day that, it's not a good idea to be putting food in our body after the sun goes down. But also what we're putting in our body is really what matters. Okay. So try and fill yourself up with super healthy food rather than junk food. Okay. So there's that. We've got Uranus still finishing up in Taurus. I believe that's all the way till the end of 2025 or 2026. So Uranus is kind of making this Taurus energy still a little sporadic. I kid you not. Almost every single Taurus person that I know has been through craziness because Uranus is scrambling things around in that sign of Taurus. It also has to do with money, financial systems, that sort of thing. Uranus is bringing abrupt, revolutionary, and technological changes to the sign that rules over money and agricultural systems. And at some point next year, Jupiter and Uranus are going to be right next to each other. Wow, the sign of Taurus is just not really getting a break for a little minute here. But at the same time, again, it can also be a beautiful thing for some of you out there. For some of you Taurus people, this could be a really good thing, making whatever, if it's your karma to be being rewarded right now, these guys might be dumping those rewards onto you, especially in this 2024 coming up here. Okay, now let's talk about Pluto. It just freaking backed up in the 29th degree of Capricorn. Woof. I've already talked a lot about this. If you already seen my recordings, I hope I'm not being too repetitive here, but Pluto popped into Aquarius. Okay. Pluto is going through the sign of Capricorn since 2008. Okay. Creating very, very powerful transformation to all things Capricorn, which is government, the structure of our civilization. Capricorn rules, it's the boss, okay? It rules authoritarian establishments, okay, including the government. And also things like the structures of our buildings and our streets and our cities, that's all very Capricornian energy. So Pluto's been going through there, especially in 2020 when Pluto was conjunct like Mars and the South Node and Saturn and oh my gosh, the structure of our civilization went bananas. And not only that, but that a lot of things have been going on involving our government or our authoritarian establishments. We're seeing all these people like the auditors who are, standing up for, I'm not talking about tax auditing. I'm talking about people who are recording things like corruption, corrupt authority. Okay. That's Pluto going through that sign of Capricorn. But anywho, so he popped into Aquarius for a minute there. Pluto, he opened up the Aquarius door and said, hey, I'm moving in, but I'll be back in a little bit, and shut the door. Now he's retrograding back into Capricorn, and that 29th degree is aneretic. And this is actually going to happen twice between now and December of 2024. Pluto moved into Aquarius. Now he's back into Capricorn. Now he's going to go forward again into Aquarius next year, but then he's going to retrograde one more time into that aneretic degree. And with that said, especially since I can't believe this is all happening in 2024 when we have an election, I think that there's going to be, hopefully people are waking up and realizing that the system that is in place is just not working. And that's Pluto's job. He reveals, okay? He pulls up the darkness. He pulls up the corruption and he shows it to people. And some people are just too blind to see it, even at this point, which is mind-boggling to me. But that might have to do with Neptune going through Pisces, people being deluded by all that Neptune and Pisces energy. But regardless, this Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn, I do think is going to be destructive. Honestly, unfortunately, to government programs. Some of them are not, some people rely on government programs and, but regardless, and I'm going to get carried away here if I go too deep. I do think Pluto moving into Aquarius in 2024 and being there all the way till 2044, I do think The people are going to rise up. I think it's going to be the people helping the people instead of people being reliant on government programs. But going back to what I was originally saying here, I do think Pluto is going to be destructive to those programs and destructive to the government in and of itself, and destructive to the structure of our civilization. Next year's election is going to be very interesting. Not only that, but Pluto is in conjunct with the sun and the moon. So this could also be like kind of heavy on the psyche, and the really the days surrounding this transit. Sun in conjunct Pluto, just be mindful of your psyche. Pluto also rules the psyche. Okay, I went way too deep on that. Okay, this right here, Neptune and Pisces. This is what I was talking about. Being like, people are like just blind. They're just totally deluded. And it's so interesting to see this, because it really is a very, very mystical, very, very spiritual transit. And a lot of people are having all these psychic downloads and all sorts of wonderful spiritual experiences with Neptune going through Pisces. But it's so unearthly that that people are being overall just deluded. But what's really, really interesting is that here, going back to Uranus in Taurus for a minute here, Uranus says, out with the old, in with the new. And he's going through the fixed earth sign. Again, that's all the way. It's either the end of 2025 or 2026 that Uranus is going through Taurus. So I do think that there's some very, very powerful revolutionary changes going on over these next 3 years while Uranus finishes up in Taurus. And hopefully Pluto getting into Aquarius will kind of shatter the delusion. And to help with that, Saturn entered Pisces in March. I also think, again, just to be clear here, because I get, for some of the people who are new to this stuff, you might be like, what is she talking about? Neptune is creating magic tricks, okay, which can be beautiful and lovely and spiritual and mystical. Absolutely. You guys have to know by now that I'm a very naturally spiritual person. But I also know that with spirituality and mysticism comes charlatans, okay? And that Neptune and Pisces, not only just charlatans, but things that are just not real, that you're being fooled by. In my very, very strong and educated opinion, you're being fooled by stuff that's on the news, okay? That's magic, okay? So there's that. But here comes, again, Pluto's going to move into Aquarius, and I do think that's going to shatter some of the delusion. The sign of Aquarius is really the sign of I know. And I think Uranus finishing up in Taurus over these next couple of years is also going to do some shattering to that delusion. Moreover, Saturn going through Pisces is bringing the hard reality. Unfortunately, Saturn going through Pisces can definitely, what's the word I'm looking for here, can reveal or show the sorrows of the world, like the woes of the world. There's some sorrowful energy that can come from Saturn going through Pisces, but also part of that very well could be Saturn being like out, like Saturn, he needs the delusions to stop going through Pisces. He needs to bring the hard reality. And even though Saturn going through Pisces is just certainly not his favorite spot. Saturn just doesn't work well in the sign of Pisces, because he is the bringer of reality. Okay. He's the one that doesn't allow delusions, and Pisces loves magic and delusions. It doesn't mean if you're Pisces, you're delusional at all. It does not mean that at all. I am a Pisces. I probably was a little bit delusional when I was younger, but we go through things, so we start to realize things as we go throughout life, and Saturn going through Pisces is playing a big role in that. This is kind of a rambly video here I've got going on. Okay, it must be all the Gemini energy. Is that what it is? Holy smokes. Okay, so let's see here. Lastly, let's touch on Chiron going through Aries. So Chiron is the wounded healer going through Aries. Aries is the cardinal warrior fire sign, okay? And Chiron wants to heal the wounds from early childhood. I can't even tell you how many clients I have that there's an age group that is receiving a Chiron return right now. All these things from early childhood development, the wounds that were painful from their childhood, Chiron is showing them like, hey, this is how this happened, and it's time to heal from those things, but we're going through Aries, so we can heal them ourselves. Now, I'm by no means trying to suggest that I would discourage somebody from getting help with healing their wounds, but Chiron going through Aries can definitely help to bring the healing through for yourself. Okay, hope that made sense. Again, I'm sorry, I'm rambling for this one. Let's talk about body parts. Okay, so Gemini really kind of rules the lungs, but also rules the hands. Of course, it rules the hands. It's the duality, but it also rules the arms, everything except for the elbows. Elbows is actually under the category of the sign of Cancer, but the duality that's going on here is Gemini and the lungs. Okay. Now, also the nervous system. In fact, Gemini really specifically rules the afferent nerves, which is basically the sensory nerves. And with all this Gemini energy going on, the nervous system might be kind of bouncing all over the place. It's a good idea to take a little extra care of these parts of our body. So I'm not a doctor, not claiming to be a doctor. I'm not trying to offer you medical advice. I'm telling you things that I have learned from my wonderful teachers, stuff that was really applied to Renaissance times to help people heal themselves and that sort of thing, but things that have just worked for me. Okay. Of course, you should always check in with your healthcare practitioner, yada, yada. Okay, so first of all, Mullein is really good for the lungs, can pull stuff out of the lungs. You can drink it as a tea. You can make it as a tincture. You know, obviously it'd be a little too late unless you got some sort of a tincture maker to make a tincture, but you can take it in tincture form or you can smoke it, okay? And it pulls stuff out of the lungs. Not only that, but Mullein is dense in minerals. All this mercurial, buzzy nervousness going on. A lot of people might be feeling their nervous system is kind of like just maybe a little extra nervous about things or something in the days surrounding this transit. Well, the minerals ground that stuff out. That's what grounds things. That's what grounds electricity is minerals. Okay. So the minerals in the Mullein can be very helpful and also support the lungs since we've got all this Gemini energy going on. Also, another really good one, super simple, is oat tops or milky oats. Super good for the nervous system. And also very dense in minerals and can ground people out. Really, really good for overall just calming the nervous system, all parts of the nervous system. Okay, now also another one I was going to mention, if you're, depends on where you live in the world, if you can get this or not, but CBD or THC CBD. I personally love CBD. There's also something, what is it? Delta 8, I think is really big in Texas because you can't buy THC in most states, but you can get CBD. And the Delta 8 is also, that's a one that's really good and calming for the nerves. Okay, when I very first started making these videos for you guys, of course I was nervous. I mean, I'm not really a nervous person. I worry more than I have to deal with nerves. Moon in Cancer, Mars and Moon in Cancer, worrying a lot. But of course, putting my face out there, that sort of thing, nerves were a little hyper. Okay. So for me, CBD tinctures, I actually use like an oil extract, like an olive oil. I think at the time I was actually doing an MCT oil extract for the CBD, or at least just high CBD, low THC. I mean, I'm not encouraging anybody to get all screwed up on cannabis or anything like that. Not to say that, I mean, obviously you guys must know at this point that I certainly do love cannabis. I love growing it. I love indulging in it. I just love the plant, period. But the CBD, if you're not, I know most people don't want to be just getting stoned. I mean, a lot of people do, but not everybody. So the CBD is non-psychoactive and just overall calming to the nerves. So those are my three, I'm not going to say recommendations. Those are the three things that I would be taking in for my own vessel, and for those of you who are interested that I'd share the information. Okay, now also gemstones. So the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for Gemini is agate. Okay, so I pulled out my favorite piece of agate here. This is blue lace agate, but seriously, agate, you can get red agate, green agate, tree agate. There's all different types of shapes, sizes, colors of agate. And depending on yourself, so this is one of the things I love about agate is that, let's say you don't have enough energy and you're like really down and out. Red agate or blood agate can help to kind of bring a little more energy through. Blue lace agate, this is more of a little bit of a Saturnian kind of color and can kind of ground things out and kind of calm things down. I certainly I don't feel like I need the red energy in my life. I feel like I'm already kind of active. But this is more like of a soothing kind of thing. If you're somebody, this could also be good for nerves, or a green agate could be really good for nerves as well. But overall, what I like to do is I like to, for this new moon specifically, is I will be using this piece of agate since it resonates with the sign of Gemini. And then I'm going to be putting probably 2 other stones that also resonate well with the sign of Gemini and other celestial energies we'll be receiving, and put those on top of my journal. After I write my manifestations out my journal, I put those on top of my journal. So the words that I have just wrote out, the spells that I am casting, are now making a more like harmonious, not even necessarily harmonious, but just a stronger connection with the celestial forces that we'll be receiving at the time of this new moon. So some other stones, and by the way, you can always look in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, look in the description, and I always leave a list of like 20 or 30 stones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through. And not to suggest, I have to make this very clear, not every stone is good for every body, okay? And some of the more powerful stones, you might want to be a little bit mindful with, a little bit. I mean, honestly, some of this stuff only just takes common sense. You know, if you are somebody who wants more energy, then, you know, the more red stones would be good for you. If you're feeling like there's all kinds of weird energies floating around you, stuff that is unwanted, then a dark protective stone. Just go through that list and see what you got hanging around, whatever resonates with you. And I usually like to work in trinities. I usually like to use 3 stones. Okay, so we already talked about the blue, any color agate. The next one I was going to talk about, okay, so Mercury's stone, again, Mercury is Gemini's ruler. Mercury is a major key player for this transit, is actually green emerald. Now, green emerald is fabulous. Okay, it's a wonderful stone. And for some people, it could be awesome for the nervous system. For some people, it wouldn't be so awesome for the nervous system. So much of that depends on your own natal chart. So you might want to be, if you have green emerald, gosh, what a beautiful stone it is. But you might just want to like feel into it, see what you think, or you can just schedule a reading. I'll tell you whether or not I think the green emerald is a perfect stone for you to be wearing. But overall, one that we can substitute the green emerald with is, which is a lot more affordable, malachite. Malachite is such an awesome stone. It's like a more affordable version of green emerald. Okay, this can be not only protective, super protective, but also grounding, stabilizing for the whole entire nervous system, the whole body. And it's just, and not only that, was Edgar Cayce. The 2 stones that I remember standing out from Edgar Cayce's recommendations were malachite and also lapis. Okay, lapis is a little bit more of a Sagittarius energy, but regardless, if you don't have any malachite, I do recommend you do. It's such a wonderful stone to have, especially like as a pendant or something like that. And if you do have it hanging around, this is what I'd be working with for this new moon. Okay, so the next one I was going to mention, this right here, is citrine, which is the reason I like this combination of things. Citrine definitely resonates well with the sign of Gemini. Not only that, but citrine is, generally speaking, I've got a darker orange sort of citrine chunk as well. But when they're more clear like this, they tend to amplify the energies and make them a bigger thing. Okay, and not only that, but citrine also really resonates well with the sign of Taurus. And remember, we've got all this Taurus energy going on as well. Not only that, but citrine can be really good for manifesting more financial abundance. So like what I was talking about, what I like to do is, this one is really specifically for that sign of Sagittarius. Okay, then the citrine is amplifying my manifestations. And then the malachite is protective and good for the nervous system. Okay, so again, just doesn't mean you have to have those 3 stones. And if you don't have any stones, that's okay. Maybe you want to manifest some gemstones with this new moon. Maybe you want to. Agate is a really, generally speaking, a very affordable stone and a wonderful stone. Truly, I would say, depending on the person, the agates, again, if you're somebody who's just very low energy, something like a red agate could be really good for you. If you're somebody who's dealing with aggression and frustrations all the time, you probably don't want any red stones around you. That's when I would go to like the blue stones or the green stones, and you can find all, red agate, blue agate, green agate, blah, 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 all those things. So agate is definitely one of the stones that I recommend just for everybody to have around. Okay, so I think I rambled. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please visit my website, erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.